So he is coming into his own spiritual awakening, deafened by the crowds, and yet riding as in forward progression, as in it must progress, it must grow. My entry into my spiritual awakening is happening. Doesn't matter what the noise is all around me. He cleared the temple. He threw a fit. But what he did was he cleared all the materialness out of the temple to make room within this holy, sacred space. Now, in our own personal journey, we're called to get quiet, to be still, to meditate. Why? Because if we don't clear a little space for the spiritual message to come through, we can't hear it. We're too taken by the senses. Now he came to celebrate Passover, and Passover is the story of Moses leading the slaves out of Egypt. And Egypt is the world of the five senses. We are held in bondage. We are slaves in Egypt when all we see is the physical world. Because when all we see is the physical world, it's limited. We're limited. Moses brought the law. He said, I will show you a better way, a more abundant way to live. When you follow spiritual law, your life gets bigger. It gets better. So this is the story of Passover that he was coming to celebrate with his disciples. On the night before his death, he took himself apart. He went to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he questioned this whole path. He knew what was coming. And his human form, his human self struggled and resisted and said, I don't think I really want to do this. It sounded great, sort of in theory, that I would, come and do this, be this example for people, but I don't want to do this. Take this away from me. Make it so it's not mine. Dr. Gary Simmons is a unity minister, and he writes about these circumstances of crucifixion that show up in our own lives, the things that happen to us that we think are going to take us out, right? Those major illnesses or trauma or unbelievable hurt or anger that seem to take over our lives and seem like they are simply going to obliterate us. And the message is that it does not end us. However, we do surrender into what's happening. We surrender not our whole personality, our will, everything else. We surrender our small self. We let go of what we're afraid of losing so that something bigger can happen. Holmes says, man is to lose the small estimate of himself, the isolated person, and is to find a greater reality, the incarnated and the real self. The eternal light is God. And this light illumines the pathway of the personal when there are no obstructions. So we're to let go not of everything pleasurable, not of everything wonderful, but simply that limited idea of who we think we are. So there's a physical death. Jesus dies. He's placed in the tomb. What's a tomb? It's a closed-in space with walls and, in this case, a stone in front. There's no way out. Have you ever been there? Yeah. Sometimes we make that tomb ourselves and wonder how we got there, and other times it seems to happen to us. But the bottom line is we feel stuck. We feel trapped. We don't think there's any way out. There's no light. There's no air. And yet, the angel comes down from heaven and rolls away the stone. What's the angel from heaven? That's that divine truth that lives in you. That's that inspiration, that intuition, that part of you that remembers every so often that there's something greater going on and you are a part of it. It's the part of you that gets you unstuck from whatever it is you're in, or that gets you through the illness, or that helps you find the circle of friends that will lift you out of your depression. Right? So that angel, that spiritual knowledge, that spiritual knowing appears for us and rolls away the tomb, pushes away that illusion of limitation, like the song said, and lets the light in. Gives us room to step out, to expand. We move again from bondage to freedom. So this is our journey. That stone is ignorance, right? Our limitations come from our ignorance because we forget what we know, that we are greater than our physical world. Rose has something to say about that as well. The Christ triumphs over death and the grave, breaking through the tomb of human limitation into the dawn of eternal expansion. Because the real message of Easter is eternal life, isn't it? Because the whole crux of the matter is the resurrection. So I looked up the word resurrection. Those of you that know me know I can't resist. It comes from the same root as resurgence. That's the original verb. Resurgence, noun rather. And it means not only to rise again, but it also means to restore and to lift oneself. So here's the thing. If we're rising again, it means we've been there before. If we're being restored, it means we're being taken back to our former glory, to our original. Have you ever restored a car? Anybody ever restored a car? Restored a classic car? Yeah. Carol has a restored classic car. You know, when you're restoring a car, if you have a Chevy, you don't put a bumper on it from a Pontiac just because it's shinier than the old one. No, to restore is to bring it back to its original form. What is your original form? It's God. It's the glory of Spirit. It's all that is divine. That is the truth of us. That is who we are. In John 3:13, it says, "And no man has ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven." And Holmes says, here's another of those hidden meanings which places Jesus among the great mystics. He says, no man can go to heaven unless he came from there. And he can neither go to nor come from heaven unless he is already there. Only that can return to heaven which has been born in heaven. And since heaven is not a place, but a state of consciousness, the return must be a recognition that heaven is already within. Oh, I don't have to be perfect. I found that terribly comforting. You know that my glory was not dependent upon my behavior. You know, there's a little clip going around, or if you saw Ellen this last week, or you see it repeated on Facebook, she interviews this little 3-year-old gymnast. So this little 3-year-old was enrolled in gymnastics because her mom said she was really pretty clumsy. She was kind of concerned that she wasn't going to, manage well. So enrolled her in gymnastics. Well, the kid's a prodigy. All right, so she's 3 and she's like doing handstands on splits and she's doing backflips on the trampoline, and it's just amazing. And Ellen says, she's up there on the bars flipping around. Ellen says, well, you must be afraid you're going to fall. And she says, no, because we just get up again. No, because we just get up again. We lift ourselves. In other words, that power is within us. That resurrection, that restoration, that rejuvenation, that rising again comes from within us. Because as Holmes teaches us, the outer God and the inner God is the same God. The power that we see in the world is actually the power that comes from us. This is the story of Easter. So traditionally we were taught that we earn our salvation and we don't get rewarded until we die. But those weren't Jesus' words. He said that heaven is now, that God is within